We had a lot of smart people here today, so this might be a little going backwards, but I'm going to try to do my best. Every year after these presentations, we try to hear from our peers, right? And we kind of jump on people. We don't invite them ahead of time. We don't say anything. We just kind of see how is it going. And then we try to pick people out of the audience to be part of a panel, very candid, nothing. They don't even know the questions I don't even know the questions I'm going to ask. So I would like to invite people from different regions to give us a perspective of different things. So Josiah, if you would join us from California. Glenn Musser from PNW. Yeah, just anywhere, pick a seat. Glenn, stop talking. Kelly, also from California. And Paul, who I have to bribe with some hats to be here, but it was enough.
Thought it was $1,000 cash.
Oh, man. Luis, we're going to have to increase the budget. Well, like I said, first of all, thank you for volunteering for this activity. I'll just start with, having every one of you introduce yourself and give like a brief background, where you are, what are you doing, what do you do, kind of thing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. My name is Josiah Thomas. I'm located in near Fresno, California. I'm the president of Agland Innovations, and we're doing a lot of crop consulting, third-party trial work with biological companies, biostimulant companies, biopesticides, fungicides, and so on.
Glenn Musser. I'm a consultant with Wilbur Ellis, Central Washington. Apples, pears, cherries, a lot of organic, a lot of conventional.
Paul Umler from West Michigan. It's complicated. So job one is consultant for Wilbur Ellis Company. Job two is co-owner and part-time manager with some other partners here with LTI Ag Research, primarily tree fruit research in our geography, and then farm as well, just for a hobby, I guess.
I'm Kelly Morrow. I'm a PCA with Fowler Packing right now, but I have been working with many crops for quite a few years, row crops to tree fruit, and I've been looking at some of this product for a few years.
Sorry, we only have one. I'm going to start. I have some preloaded questions that came to my mind during the presentation, so we'll just go from there. On the crops that you're working right now, what are some of the maybe couple pain points that you're trying to solve on those crops related, could be to stress, environment, or performance, all the things that we talk about today? What are a couple of those issues that you're focusing on right now?
Yeah, stress.
Just two.
So heat stress has been a big issue in Central California. Growing up, I don't remember it being as the UV index being as high as it's been. The long consecutive days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, that's been a significant issue for growers. We've seen sizing issues, and we've also had obviously water constraints in the Central Valley, so that's another issue growers are working with. Are you wanting to know how we're dealing with it? We'll go to that next.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Pests are always a problem. Colleen moss always rearing its head coming back. Stress is also another constant problem. So.
From the farm side, labor, right? That's the number one, but I don't think Parka can help much with that. Maybe. Yeah, the change in the weather pattern is a big one. This heat and extreme sunlight that my counterparts in the West deal with. They've talked about it forever, but we're really starting to deal with it more so in Michigan. And then, yeah, the lack of rainfall is another big thing. I mean, it was a 2 size count reduction on our apple production this year that we could see across the board. So it's a big thing to overcome.
Yeah, I'd say heat and pests. It's pretty much.
We all talk about heat. Any of you had any cold issues?
this year it's colder than it got cold earlier than it has been, but it hasn't been no freeze issues yet. So.
Gotcha.
I'm in Michigan. It's probably -10 right now, so it's always cold there.
I know. We talk a lot about a cuticle. Of course, that was the whole theme of the whole meeting, right? How many of you, before this meeting or in a past experience, have thought about the cuticle as an area that I could look into or attach to a program or think as a tool to address some of these issues before this kind of conversation being brought up today? Was a cuticle in your radar before this, basically?
It's been on our radar, but definitely learning a lot. This is my first time coming to this, so it's been beneficial to see a lot of the work that's being done elsewhere. And we've been evaluating things like the monosilicic acid for cell wall development and vascular strength, and using that as a tool and trying to identify things that we can use, but not just identifying tools, but really identifying timing and when to use these tools. And so it's been on our radar, but now it'll be something we dial in on.
Well, isn't your slogan, it all goes back to the cuticle? So, through you guys, yeah, I'd say the cuticle's been on the radar. Without you guys, probably wouldn't be, but we've been addressing it using Parka on different things for russet, for cracks, for size, for stems. Yeah.
So yeah, before this and last year, it wasn't on my radar or any of my growers' radars. So quite intriguing to learn something new. Besides, the GA products or lenticel issues or external rots, things like that. Those are always on our radar, but a deep dive into something like this hasn't been. And it's actually from both my day job and the research side, it's been something that I think it's maybe one of our flagship type products or educational pieces, because most of the growers in our geography haven't even ever understood it. And they're always pretty apprehensive when we bring information back from the P&W or from California. But last year, after listening to Dr. Rose and bringing some of his research and showing some of your publications to growers, it opened their eyes more than ever. And I think we're just on the very beginning of what we're learning here. So.
Of course, had to be the guy from New York.
Yeah.
He's local.
Yeah, I think cuticle's been on the radar, but I think this kind of meeting really helps to kind of pinpoint. There's a lot of different angles to really look at, and I agree to the timings to put them on, and just learning that you've got every variety is going to have a different cuticle, and you're not going to make it. You can only make it as good as you can, and so I think that's what this has been helpful here.
We talk a lot about the stress, and you guys mentioned, I think 4 of you, the heat stress and things like that. And we've seen a lot of usage of products to try to, address that or help or support the tools that are being brought, biostimulants and things to help plant performance, alleviate that. What has been your experience with that kind of tool, those products so far? And what are you reusing or you're trying or you have tried, or expand on that?
The experience is the market's flooded with everybody saying they've got something that works. Growers are upset, prices are high, and they want something that's cheap and going to work, right? And so they will use things that are more costly if you've got data. And so for us, we've used many different products and evaluated many products, and we continue to do that. And now we kind of have changed the approach. A lot of times manufacturers would come in and ask growers to do trials. I'm sure people have experience with that. It doesn't go well most of the time. They're too busy. They forget where it was at. They forgot to, check it after harvest. Turns into a disaster. And so we just kind of have taken the stance where we say, okay, come work with us, and we've got the relationships with the growers. If this works, we'll put it in our distribution channels, and we'll be the guys that kind of ensure that the product's working and figuring out how to use it to the best of our ability. Tools, on the biostimulant side that we're using many. Um, it's chaotic though, because a lot of times they'll work well in one crop. You can go across the street and they don't do the same thing, right? So it just depends on quality, right? Uniformity in the product. I think that it's getting much better, and in California especially, we're losing different products continually, and it'll get worse. So we have to look in this direction, and we have to find new tools, especially on the biopesticide, biofungicide side. I think that's going to get bigger, especially as more investment comes into it. But for us is we're trying to identify tools to monitor the effects of these biostimulants and the success. So we're using spectrometers in the field and trying to evaluate different stress indices and determine exactly how did that work. And it needs to be a non-destruct sample. We need to be able to do it there in the field and be able to show the grow immediately. And this is where AI comes into play, and it's really sped up the process for us. The data points were so dramatic and so big, we couldn't evaluate all of the data that we were getting. And over the last year, that's really sped things up. So AI is going to be key, I think, moving forward and being able to use these tools.
What was your question?
That's what I want to remember.
What biostimulants or biological products are being using or trying for stress mitigation or plant performance maybe improvement?
Well, I'd say pack out is king, and if right now prices are low, if you're not on top of the pool, you're probably not making any money. And if you're in the top of the pool, you're probably not making much money on a lot of varieties. So put more packs in the warehouse and getting them out to the store. And so whatever it takes to do that, timing's got to be tighter, better. Insect control's got to be better. Sunburn mitigation, you got to grow a tree faster. You got to put a bigger crop on it, and you got to get it as soon as you can get it, 3 years, 4 years, and you want to pick 100 bins. And so we've used Parka like next to shade cloth to grow young trees. Had pretty good luck. We've used Parka under shade cloth. We've used Parka under fogging now, mitigate sunburn, help us heat stress a little more. And then PGRs, we're using more retain all the time. Look at the timings, harvest windows, H2A, managing people, and just trying to pick the best fruit we can.
So don't throw anything at me, but in the East we have less extremes as far as stress events. We get adequate rainfall most often. We don't usually see extreme heat. We don't usually see extreme sunlight. But from the research side of this, there's a billion things, as you were saying, there's a billion things that get thrown at you that this is going to do X, Y, or Z. And any of you that heard my coworker last year said when Cultiva came to us with this product, we said, oh, yep, cool, another snake oil coming, right? And we put it up against all the things that they were asking us about, and obviously a billion more things now. And this is the first one that we've seen that not only could show quantifiable statistical results, but growers, as most everybody here knows, could actually visually see it on pack out, exactly what you said, especially some of the high performing varieties when it comes to the FOB. So I'm not selling the product, I promise, here today, but it sold itself very quickly after 2 or 3 years worth of good solid results in our geography. So
Would you mind explaining how unique is your LTI operation, how you get to those pack outs and how you guys are doing that trial?
Okay, so yep. So LTI, it is a organization, not unlike many of them, contracted researchers, but it's also growers pay a membership for the IP that comes out of that research entity. So we have integrated ourselves into their operations as well, whether it's intimate trials on their farms or our little hobby 80-acre farm. And then we have a small compact grader that we run everything over, right? Just like I'm sure every other CRO does this, but we not only will track it for our pack outs, but the growers as well that we do trials on, and that's what sold it for them. I mean, you just run the trial for them on their farm, and they pack it out in 2 different lots, and they said, well, that's a no-brainer. It did take 2 or 3, or maybe Dan or somebody could correct me, but it took 2 or 3 years of us doing this on our own farm. And after consistent results year after year, we finally had their ear, and they said, well, shit, if this is your grower standard now, it should be ours. So it sold itself, if that answers your question, kind of to clarify.
Yeah, I think I agree with the biostimulants and all those. There's quite a few, and as a grower, you put it out, and then can you find where the quantification? Sometimes you just don't have the time. But I've worked enough with the Parka, and first I started with cherries, and you could tell the, for cracking, and then I was doing stuff with deciduous, and we were seeing less inking where we were putting it pre-harvest on peaches, especially the white peaches and some of the nectarines, and so that was visual. And then with the citrus, I think I started putting it out at like the thrip spray timing. I think that we had a really bad year, 2023, and I was lucky if I could get 3 days out of a product. And some of my Parka blocks, I was getting 5-6 days, and so it was consistent just to the Parka. I even had a side-by-side block that I sprayed when the other block, I sprayed both of them, resprayed both of them when the one that didn't have Parka was getting bad. And at the end of the season, it was visually, you could see the thrip scars on the one that didn't have the Parka early, or didn't have Parka, and the one that did have Parka was like 100% better. So that was pretty visual to me.
I remember that year.
You guys talk about, how it's hard to measure, and sometimes also the snake oil effect that we're here. And trust me, being on the sales team, I face that all the time, because as you saw here, and the Cuticle touch so many functions and so many portions. So when you come and say, we can help you there can be very overwhelming. But how do you guys kind of like go through that process? Paul, you mentioned a little bit, it took you guys 2-3 years, but like vetting this program or vetting the technology, not just Parker specifically, but all this technology that coming at you guys to get to, first, like, how do you even choose what to vet it, and because there's a lot of options. And then how do you go through the system on your operation?
When we're choosing products to vet, we're looking for problems to solve. So depending on products that, use cases, right? We'll evaluate the use cases and see what they claim those products are used for. And we have growers that, we manage different acreage for on the other side of the business. And we know what the problems are. We also know what the budget looks like and what we can spend. And so we try and find things that can fit within that budget and solve those problems. And a lot of the nut growers, they're having a lot of trouble growing, right? That things are getting harder to do. Input costs are higher than they've been. And at the same time, they're dropping their budgets off like crazy. So we're trying to find things that can, for Parka, if you can cut costs elsewhere, even if you've got a cost that's, significant in certain instances, if you can either cut costs in a certain spot or increase the efficacy of something else, the effectiveness, right, then those are things that we want to evaluate and put into the program.
So if it's synergistic with something.
Exactly. Yeah. If it doesn't have a role to play, we're really not looking at it. And we have people that bring stuff to us all the time, and we can't fit them in the schedule if it doesn't fit into the use case. And we've got big acreage that we trial on, but it's just not worth the time unless there's a use case, right?
You're talking about like a free ride?
Oh yeah, free ride compatible is important too, right?
Glenn doesn't know about free ride.
So the main thing I'm hearing, a lot of guys I work with, they wanted to cut their budgets last year by like 20-25% on what they spend.
Yeah.
Same thing this year. Want to reduce their budget by 20%. But they still want 20, 21, 22 packs spent. And so, like Parka, when I started with Parka is when you guys basically first had it. And we used to do a lot of trials with it, looked at it side by side. I'm kind of beyond the trial phase. Don't really care. I've already saw it. I know it works. put it in the program where I think it makes sense, and try to grow a good piece of fruit and help people make money.
So the way that we positioned it, or the way we originally got folks on board, when we brought it from our farm to other growers' farms, out of the 3 out of the 4 of us owners, maybe have 15,000 acres or something that we can control or have some control over. And we always try to find a spot where growers say these ones won't get red, or they always sunburn, or so we always try to find the worst case scenario that you can't solve the problem, right? And then as you progress, you also take the top end as well, the top 10% of the blocks, and say, can we turn the dial in those blocks as well? Because percentage is percentage, right? An extra unit or two, you do some cost breakdown, and it's easy math. So that's where we positioned it. The compatibility thing is something that is definitely needed to be talked about. The free ride thing not only helps with getting the application out there, but there is the 1 + 1 = 3 mentality here with a lot of things, the plant growth regulators and insecticides and things like that. And I don't know if we need to dive down deep into all of what we've hypothesized that we've learned, but there's some major synergies here with other products that we're already putting in the tank that have displaced many materials that we've used already. So some of them may be causing detriment, materials that Parka has displaced. So once again, it's selling itself, just finding that little niche little spot. The other thing that we do, because the growers have access to our research and they are quite involved in some of the direction that we go and the desire of what to keep continuing to research, they will say, hey, what do you think about trying this or moving it here? And then we'll set the trial up and quantify it and tell them that didn't work, or it turned to jello, or yep, we have something here. So kind of lead by the industry is what's leading us doing that as far as progressing.
Yeah, I think when I'm trying to look at new products, if we look at it 1 year and it looks like it's doing some help or having some progress there, sometimes it's like, well, let's see how it does next year, because it could just have been a weather event or something. And so, but this one I've seen consistent year after year, and I kind of just want to use it as, the grower standard, because one thing I like about it, like with that thrift sprays, is I don't have to put a spreader in because it works as a spreader. So that's one way I say, hey, we're saving some money on spreader. This is a little more expensive, but we're saving money and we're getting a lot of ROI from this product. And so I think that's what's been helpful to look at it that way.
You guys all touch a little bit on some things that you're using, and can we get a little deeper, like what is like your programs look like for, let's say, if you're citrus or for your apples or your cherries, or maybe what you're testing or your growers' own nut trees are using? Like what's the Park Experience program looks like for you guys now?
What's the what experience?
The program.
Okay.
Like, are you doing 2 applications at this period? Because we're talking a lot about timing, right? We all guys mentioned this, finding the specific time that tools can be more effective and cost benefit for you and return ROI. Sometimes we're trying some things, but we always learn from you guys, because you guys go there and twist it your own way, because you have the field experience and you walk in those fields every day, and you can bring things that might be beneficial for us, not just to try and validate, but also to learn from you guys.
Yeah, so I'm new to Parka. I reached out to them because I was working with another company that had a monosilicic acid product that I have had really good success with. And I was trying to find something that we could use to replace, some of the other products that we're using to prevent sunburn on some of the crops that we're growing. And I think I had emailed and reached out and then got in touch with Brian. But right now what we're doing is I have growers that are using it, but us personally, we started really looking at monosilicic acid, amino acids, and putting them on. Started looking at, okay, what can we do for sunburn and sizing? Because we noticed that with the consecutive days of high heat, we started seeing a significant reduction in size on citrus and on other crops as well. We saw the yield decreases across the board. Not this year's been real mellow, but the last couple of years have been intense. And so I started looking at this monosilicic acid product at like 12 to 16 fluid ounces per acre, putting it on monthly. And I noticed if you get it on early and often, you had the best effect. That was clear. We saw that we were moving our micros, making it more efficiently. We were able to move them throughout the canopy. We were picking that up in areas that we were pretty surprised by. And so with Parka, my intentions are to take that and blend that and use that. And so I wanted to do some research on that and start working with it and trying to use it to solve some of the problems that we're seeing on the heat side of things, that heat stress and the sizing side. Programs are all over the place. Like every grower that we work with has a different program. And a lot of times now, distributors are kind of running the programs. A lot of the PCAs they're pretty dialed in on what they're running. And so really, when we're working with growers, they may have a PCA that they trust and they want to work with. And so we're coming in and just either working side by side with them, trying not to get in the way. If they trust a guy, you want to make sure that you're not upsetting anybody there. But programs are, they're pretty diverse. It's not, you don't get one program. We grow so many different crops. We're working in almonds, walnuts, pistachios, table grapes, citrus, blueberries. So it's pretty chaotic. But my thought is, from what I've seen, it looks like you need to get on early. And I really like the idea of post-harvest application. They make a lot of sense.
So I'd say the program probably varies a lot depending on the ranch and the owner or management firm, whoever's behind it. Cherries, a lot of times will start early petal fall. Some guys will wait, drag their feet. They don't want to put that one on. They'll wait and put their first one with the jib. And then depending on the variety, 14 to 21 days after jib, they're putting the second one on. Some guys will go every 2 weeks. Some guys are running a gallon every time. Some guys are dropping it down, trying to get away with a half gallon. Half gallon I don't think looks quite as good. Post-harvest on cherries, I was running Parka, and now with Western X and some of the other, the vectors being leafhopper, pretty much every one of my cherry blocks is getting heavy surround post-harvest. So I kind of dropped the Parka out of that program because we're already pounding it with surround. So, and then apples, we're putting it on young trees early, pretty comparable to shade cloth. Under shade cloth with Parka looks really good. You can grow a tree really fast. And then the apple program, petal fall with my thinning sprays, thrip sprays. I mean, if you want to talk about compatibility, there's 13 things in some of those tanks. So we're running, leaf roller, all our thinning program, thrip spray, and Parka. So, and then that one we'll usually chase, depending on kudos, apogee, whatever flavor you're running in nutrients. Probably at least 21 days before we'll get back. But I like that one because we're usually spraying the whole canopy of the tree on our first application, and then thinning pretty soon we're moving up into the canopy. It might be the top half, upper third. And so, yeah, that's kind of my program. Adapt and change.
That's how you survive.
It's definitely evolving. In apples, we started with the gallon, and we did, I think, just 4 applications. We tried a proof of concept of 6 different times or 7 times a year. Victoria might be able to answer that, but we tried the maximum effect, and then we have been ratcheting back since then. I do have customers that, I hate to say the word get away, but they've gotten away with 1 rate of a gallon and then following it up by half a gallon rates through the rest of the season. Mild stress years or sunburn years, I think you can get away with that. This year it didn't work as good where they cheated, but it kind of depends on per variety what we're trying to accomplish, right? Some varieties, maybe like Fuji, or we're looking for less internal browning, or on Honeycrisp it's the cuticle, actually the aesthetics of the cuticle, or red color, or rots, whatever that might be. So there's not any clear direction of there's not any clear recommendation that I'm giving everybody. I'm trying to figure out what they're trying to accomplish, trying to figure out what variety they're going to do, figure out their storage plan, if it's long-term, or fall packed fruit, whatever it is, and then we adjust the program from there. But yeah, the Cadillac program is for us in our geography, pedal fall timing. The earlier the better, no question. But there's still a lot of apprehension, especially only 2-3 years into this, with what they can mix it with. So there's a lot of caution happening at that pedal fall timing because, like you said, there's 15 things in the tank. So growing comfort there. I guess I'll leave that there. And then, yeah, every 14 to 30 days apart, depending on what their rate is and their comfort and their experience and the variety. And, just like everything, there's more questions to the program every time you learn something more. So, but, yeah.
I'm mostly right now using as much as I can with there's a few other PCAs in the company, so everybody has their own opinion. But what I like is the Parka at a gallon, and I'll start with on the citrus with like the first thrip spray, which was around just after pedal fall, and then I'd like to get the 2 on. So when we have a second thrip spray, hopefully it's 2 weeks after. Hopefully it's 2 weeks after. Sometimes I might have to switch it up, but try to get the 2 on there. I think I had a few blocks I might have had a third Parka, but they were the kind of the weaker block or ones that had more problems. And that seems to help a lot. And I think this year, since I used a lot more, I'll be able to kind of make a list of which ones had 2 and 3, and then once we get the harvest complete, maybe see if we are seeing any differences. But that's pretty much. And then on young trees that we've just planted, I do like to get some applications on them, because about once a month we're putting fertilizer or foliar and something to knock back some bugs. And so I'll throw the Parka in there because it does help with the stress.
Yeah, thank you. Well, this is always good because I gotta give a shout out, Greg. The reason we all use on baby trees now is because he tried on and told us, and then we did some research with Qualls and Quincy, and it was right when I first started working with Cultiva. I remember calling Sean. I was like, "You gotta come see this thing. The trees look different." But I had just like 15 days on the job, and I was like, "Do I call him or do I do this? Am I seeing this right?" But yeah, Greg Newman and Keith, they had some really difficult areas there with wind. We talked about last panel that Greg was here, but yeah, so we're always learning from you guys. Today, personally, I learned so much from the speakers. There was a lot of new information that I'm excited to actually go back to my slides and change quite a few of them, because I'm going to add a lot more context to my presentations. What is something that you learned today that stood out, or something that you click on your mind that you like to validate, test, check, or go forward, or moving from here?
There's a lot, but one, I'm really intrigued by the Rachis. On the table grapes, we've seen, even on high quality varieties, you get them in the store and the Rachis just starts to break down. And so we've been doing a lot of work with 1-MCP. That's varietal dependent. Those ethylene inhibitors on the table grapes, it's kind of a weird one to use, but it does work. But again, it is varietal dependent, and it'll have adverse effects with other varieties. So looking at Parka, I've got blocks right now that these guys would jump right on that, because it's a huge concern on the post-harvest side. So post-harvest, in the cold storage itself, evaluating fruit after using it, that was really intriguing. Yield, obviously, on the almonds. If I know that was a grower trial, so that's one I want to replicate and see, because with the yield bump there, you can fit it in the program if you can get yield like that. In Carmels, the bud failure on Carmels it's terrible. So if you're seeing a jump on Carmels like that, then that's significant. So that really stood out to me. So looking at crops that I kind of thought, maybe wouldn't be a good fit, that today it kind of changed my mind. So those would be the two that really stood out.
I guess one of the things I was thinking of is just how different the cuticle is on every piece of fruit. And I don't know if I ever gave that any thought, but it does make total sense. And then the stressors that change the cuticle, and a lot of it we're doing in our own orchards, like humidity, you know. I mean, it gets hot, we're cranking on the misters, we're putting on the overheads. I mean, we're putting the trees under constant stress and setting huge crops, or trying to set huge crops. So, I mean, they're kind of getting fired up from all sides. So anything we could do to try to get it better just makes sense.
Yeah, the size, shape, structure of that cuticle is pretty intriguing. I think Dr. Rose is the one who showed the slide of how far down into the rest of the fruit. You have a bunch of really good fancy words. Nice job. So just the structure, how far it's moving down, and I just can't help but wonder, a lot of physiological disorders that we say are X, Y, or Z, you know, it could be likely that it's cuticle dependent, right? Or the strength of it or lack thereof. And not only just the season-long program, but especially the one pre-harvest, if that one can help us with some legs in the storage, some shelf life in the storage. And the one thing that I wanted to mention on that too, Thiago, is the synergies that we've seen with AVG. It's such an easy free ride pre-harvest. I mean, you're obviously only 28 days or 14 days, whatever it is on every variety and situation, but what we've learned from that one, the synergies, as well as potentially this long-term gain that we get from storage. And I think it kind of goes in with what Dr. Rose was showing, was how far deep that cuticle goes in there, and it's in between all of those cells that we think are probably damaged with physiological disorders, but maybe it's actually the cuticle. So the answer is a lot of things learned, but that was a cool one.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I think the post-harvest idea in the storage is something I hadn't thought of. We were always looking at in the season for the heat stress and the pests and all that, but maybe even cold stress. Maybe we get into some frost, think about putting on some baby trees. But in citrus right now we're doing a lot of fungicides, and I hadn't really thought about adding it with the fungicides to create a stronger cuticle, so when they are getting picked, maybe that will last a little longer into the harvest, or into the cold storage.
Well, thank you guys. Yeah, we're all very fortunate to learn from these guys today, I think. Before I close this conversation, it's been great. I would like to know if anyone in the audience, we always open kind of this section to, if you have a question for any one of the people here on the panel, specifically from what you heard from this conversation, or anything that you would like to ask, if anybody has any questions. All right, we are done. Well, thank you guys for, again, volunteering to this conversation. I appreciate the kindness and the candid response and the sharing everything your experience. And I'm happy to have all of you here. And I'll let Chris probably do some arrangements for the event for tonight or whatever we're going to do. But that's all we have. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys.